Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Design and Quilt Monthly. My name is Mark Garretts and I'm a National R&K educator. And this month we're going to be continuing with Appliques. Last month we did Appliques Part 1. This month is Appliques Part 2, where we're going to be covering some more advanced ways of inputting appliques, especially from images. If you didn't see Appliques Part 1, I advise you to go back and take a look at that one before beginning this lesson, and that will answer a lot of questions that we won't go over in this lesson. So last month we covered appliques in general, and we went over the fact that in order to bring an applique in from the shape library, the custom shape library here, you can do that in either this mode, which I'm in right now, or which is the standard mode, or in the block mode, which is where you would bring blocks in. And we also covered the fact that you could bring in an external vector file, which is what we did here, this apple, and save that in my custom shapes and bring it into a quilt block design. But what we didn't cover is what if the applique design that you want to bring in doesn't exist as a vector file or artwork, which is like an SVG file. So what if it's an image file, also known as a bitmap file? So that would be like a JPEG or a PNG or a BMP or those kind of formats. Those cannot be directly used as applique files. They need to be converted to vectors, or in Floriani R&K speak, we call those artwork files. Okay, so how do we get a JPEG or similar bitmap file and convert it into artwork? And that's what we're going to cover in this lesson today. So you want to be in design mode, which is this opening screen, which is the way Design and Quilt opens up in design mode. You do not want to be in block mode. You want to be in this mode. And what we're going to do is load in an image. Now when we loaded in an artwork file, we could just click File and Open, and we could load in an artwork file. But we cannot do that with an image file. It's not a type of file that we can open directly. We can bring it in, but we bring it in a very special way. We bring it in as something called a backdrop. And backdrops are controlled with this icon over here on the left, the backdrop tool. And if I click it, you will see that it opens up a window where we can browse around. And I have some quilt pics here. So here are some pictures of quilts, and in that folder I have put this apple silhouette file. Okay, so this is a JPEG, and I'm going to go ahead and click it and click Open. You could also double click it and it would open, and that comes in as what's known as a backdrop. Okay, and so you could start putting things over the top of this. What we typically use a backdrop for in the embroidery world is to trace over the top of it to create a vector or outline, and that's exactly what we're going to do here, although we're not going to be using it for embroidery. We could, and we'll cover that in another lesson, but in this lesson we're going to be concerned with mainly using it as a normal applique in a block. Okay, so here is our image, and over here in our properties box we have image controls. So we have here the size, the scale, etc. You can change the size if you want. You can scale it up and down. You can rotate it if you want. You can use this darker or lighter slider to make it darker or lighter. We don't need to do that in this case because all we're really concerned with is the outline. And that brings up a good point. When you're looking for images to use as appliques, if they're already appliques, chances are they're going to look like this, or they're just going to be an outline, and you won't have any problem. But if you try and find a normal piece of clip art and you want to search for something, like say you want to search for an apple picture that you want to use as an applique, put the word silhouette in your search. And I don't mean silhouette like the cutter, I mean silhouette like this, which is just an outline of an object, because that's typically what we want for an applique. We don't want a lot of details and things in here because they're not going to be part of the applique when we're done. So we just want that outline. So now how do we convert that into vectors? So the first thing we have to do is get out of backdrop mode. And you can tell I'm in backdrop mode because I've got it selected here, and you can see the backdrop here in the properties box. So to get out of that mode, I just come back to our normal select icon over here and click that. And when I do that, you'll see that nothing is selected. If I try and click and select that backdrop right now, I can't, because it's designed to be there and be immovable, because we want to do things over the top of it and not have this move around or get accidentally selected. If we need to reselect it for some reason, we can do that by clicking the backdrop tool once again. So if I click that, it selects it once again. It knows I have one loaded, so it doesn't try and load another one again. So I'm going to come back up to my normal select tool and click that. And now we're going to start tracing around the outside. We have a couple of tools to do that. If possible, if your image is a good one and it's got a nice even tone like this one does, you can use a built-in tool to trace this automatically. And in Design and Quilt, we call it the Magic Needle tool. And it is right here. Okay, so if I click that, what's going to happen if I click somewhere, it's going to trace this outline and convert it into a vector. So if I click in the middle here, it's going to trace it. And you can see over here, it traced an outline of it. If I turn off the backdrop so we can see what that trace looks like, I do that with this other backdrop icon over here, the one with the eyeball, which is the Show or Hide Backdrop tool. So if I click that, my image of the backdrop goes away, and you can see I've got a traced outline of the backdrop. And this would probably actually work very well for what we want to do. But if you kind of look close, you'll see that it's a little bit jagged, and that's because that's the way images are in real life. They're a little jagged, so it does the best job it can in trying to trace all those little jagged edges. If I click my normal select tool, and then I come over here to this artwork, because I've now selected it, and I right click, so I'm right clicking on the mouse. One of the options here is something called Simplify Smoothing. Okay, and if I click that, it's going to bring up a dialog asking me what kind of precision I want, what kind of tolerance I want, and you can play with these if you want. Generally the defaults work okay, so I'm just going to leave everything alone and click OK. And when I do that, it's going to compute for a while, and you can see visually that it cleaned it up quite a bit. I'm going to click undo to unclean it up, because I want to go into a mode called shape mode. And shape mode is when we want to control the outlines, we want to edit those outlines. We do that with something called shape mode. To get into shape mode, we use this shape icon here. And if I click that, you can see I've got all these little squares here. We call those nodes or anchors. And those are what control the outline. But you can see that the way that it automatically generated this, there are an awful lot of those. So if I come back to my normal select tool once again, I right click and I click Simplify Smoothing again and click OK. And I could have done a redo. I'm going to go back into shape mode, and you can see that I've got a whole heck of a lot fewer points here. So this makes it a lot easier to edit. Now, I don't necessarily need to edit these points, but I could. So for example, let's say the stem of this apple here is a little too thin for me. I don't really want to make this an applique. I want to exaggerate that stem a little bit. So if I click on a node, that selects it. If I hold down the Control key and I click on another node, it adds to that selection. So now I've got those 3 nodes selected. If I do that one more time and again one more time, now what I've done is selected all of this right side here. And what I can do now, if I click on any one of these nodes, I will move them together as a group. So if I want to fatten this up, the way I would do that is I would come here and I would just click and drag over a little bit. Okay, it's changing the angle a little bit, but that would fatten it up. If I want to change the angle back, I could click just this one and move this one over a little bit, and maybe move this one, and maybe I like the way that looks. Now I've got a fatter stem. So you can see that I can adjust my outline using the shape tool. Right? So if I reselect this, I'm still in shape mode. Another thing I can do is start to delete points. Okay? So let's say I want to get rid of this leaf. Well, I might want to have selected an apple that didn't have the leaf to begin with, but I can go and click all these nodes around here to select them, but I can also just simply drag a box around them. Now, I probably want to get rid of this one, and I want to get rid of this one too, so I can very carefully try and drag a box around this. So I'm going to come over here and try and get over here, and let's see how accurate I am. Okay, I didn't get that last node down there, but that's okay. I'm just going to drag a box, and I'm going to let go, and it selects all those. And now, again, I can add to it by clicking this one, and it looks like I might have missed that one. It's hard for me to tell, but we'll find out in a minute. Now what I'm going to do is delete them. Okay, so I'm going to use the delete key on my keyboard. I could also right-click and select delete points. So let's do that. Instead, I could use the delete key on my keyboard, but I'm going to do this delete points. And what happened there is I deleted it, and it automatically reconnected that. Okay, so now I've deleted the leaf, but I've got kind of a weird angle in here, and I probably want to round this up a bit. So what I can do is click this node here, and I can right click on it, and I'm going to change that to what's called a smooth point. Okay, and when I click it again, now you can see I've got these two extensions of it here called handles. Okay, and if I click and drag those handles, I can adjust the curve. So you can see that they move kind of like a seesaw. So I can adjust the curve, but when I do that, it's moving both sides. Okay, and I can move one in and adjust the sharpness of that angle, or I can move it out and make it less sharp. You see how it's doing that? Okay, so even though they move together like that, I can adjust the angles on both sides. So if I click it again, I can move this one, but see how when they move together, I bend both of them. If I only wanted to bend one, I could change to what's called a cusp point. And a cusp point lets me independently move either one. So if I wanted to create a sharp point like that, I could use a cusp point. Okay, so I don't know if I like the way this looks. Let me just bend this up a little bit here. All right, so that doesn't look too bad. That looks kind of natural like an apple. So I could go ahead and use this as my applique. All right, so that's one way that we can do it. The other way we can do it is we can actually draw inputting the points ourselves around the applique. All right, so let me get rid of everything we've done here. So I'm going to do a bunch of undos to get back to where we just had our backdrop. Okay. Oop, I can't do that. Let me go and load the backdrop one more time. And there's our backdrop. Okay, so let's say we want to keep this the way it is, but we're just going to trace it. Okay, I'm going to come to normal select mode, and I've got this artwork tracing tool here called the pencil. Now our magic needle traced it automatically. The pencil will trace it manually. When I click the pencil tool, this lines up here, all right, and I have various ways I can use the pencil tool. So the default is line mode. If I click the little down arrow here, I can do what's called pen mode. So this is for freehand drawing, which is not what we want to do. Bezier mode is an advanced way of entering lines. We're not going to go over that. I can put in arcs automatically, and I can put in curves automatically. We aren't going to use any of those in this lesson. We're going to do that in a future lesson. So we're going to stay in line mode. Now the way line mode works is when I click with the mouse, I'm going to put in a straight line point. When I put in a control along with a click, that is going to put in a curved point. So I'm going to start out with a straight line. I like to start in some kind of a corner here. So I'm going to click there. I've got a pretty straight line to here, and this is going pretty straight, so I'm going to click up to there, and now my line is going to start to curve. So I'm going to hold down Control. You can't see I'm doing it, but I'm holding down Control, and I'm going to input all the rest of these points. And you can see that I'm not putting in very many, but the software is automatically curving them for me. All right, so now I've got back down to here. Now I need to go straight. If I just put in another control point, what's going to happen is it's going to bend that because it thinks I want to put in a curve. You see how it bent it? Now maybe I like that, but I don't. So how do I back up? I click the backspace key, and I'm going to backspace one more time to get rid of that extra curve. I'm going to hold down Control one more time and click here. Now to get a straight point, I'm going to let off Control, come out just a little bit and click again. So that gives me a sharp corner. I could go in and convert this to a cusp point, but that's an extra step, so I don't want to do that. Now I'm holding down Control again, and I'm coming along and I'm clicking. And you can see how I'm not clicking very many points. Now see here, it didn't follow the curve, but watch what happens as I continue to click. See it how it automatically tries to hold that curve? Okay, now it's not holding it exactly, but you know what? No one's going to know because no one's going to see the apple. They're just going to see what you did. Okay, so I'm going to click here. Now I'm going to uncontrol, so straight line point here and Control again. So I'm going to come up here, come up here, come up here. Now I gotta move over a little bit because my record controls are in the way. Okay, now I can see this. So I moved them out of the way. You can't see that, unfortunately. So I'm going to click one more time, and then I'm going to let off Control and click, and I hold down Control again, and I'm just going to follow that curve around until I get close to where I need to end. And in order to make this into an applique for real, I need to close this shape. And the way I do that is I come over here to this icon and I click Close Shape. That's the Close Shape icon, and that automatically closes it. Now if I go back to normal select mode and I hide my backdrop, you can see that I have traced that apple and it looks pretty good. And again, it didn't follow the curve perfectly over here, maybe a little bit down here, but no one is going to realize that. As long as you're okay with the shape, you don't need to get in there and edit it. So that's our lesson for this month. If you're wondering, okay, how do I take that and apply it to a quilt block? Well, we covered that in the last month's lesson. So go back and take a look at Appliques Part 1 to fill in the blanks. And I want to thank you for watching and invite you to come back next month for another edition of Design and Quilt Monthly.